What if I told you that potential is the very thing that traps a lot of people in mediocrity? So, the moment they discover their potential or pick interest in a skill, almost immediately they rush towards visibility. They become more focused on impressing others and proving themselves than they are on improving quietly. Only a few people actually submit to the discomforting and quiet process of building genuine capacity. And that difference is why a lot of people with great potential remain mediocre for years. But you just escape that pitfall because in this video, I'm going to explain how premature visibility traps people in mediocrity, and I'm going to share with you one ingredient that will distinguish you as an exceptional youngster. I am Lydia Mark, and you're welcome to the Enlightened Show. One of the regrets I have in life is regarding my writing career. Between ages 12 to 13, when I discovered I had a knack for writing fiction and telling stories, all I wanted was to be out there and to become a writer, to be known as a Nigerian teenage author. I was so obsessed with that narrative and title. And so I spent a chunk of my time announcing myself as a writer and creating projects of botched and unfinished books, and of course, dreaming. No doubt I had the potential to become a seasoned author. Full stop. That's where it started and ended as a potential. I built my house on potential. That was a tragedy. And eventually, I realized that excellence is not a question of having potential, but what you decide to do with it as a priority: expression or expansion. One aims to appear competent, the other aims to become competent. Now, when people hear the word mediocrity, they think about laziness, but mediocrity is most often disguised as activity, business, visibility. Some people are constantly posting, constantly producing, constantly performing, yet their actual skill barely evolves. When they realize a spark of talent, they learn only a thing or two for a couple of weeks and emerge the public space with an unearned label knitted onto a cape. Everyone must see that Lydia can do ballet, and then they try to juggle growing privately with showing up publicly. This pattern also occurs when we try to clutter our bio and our portfolio with skills and titles that we cannot yet account for through competence, but just have only a tiny knowledge about. Because somehow we want people to see those multiple skills and go, oh, they have many skills. They must be really gifted. I want to create an impression of being multi skilled. It does have a nice ring to it, but are you qualified? Guys, I've read stuff from professing writers that became a lesson to me as a writer. So, once upon a time, I met this lady who is a professing writer and has published several books and has a community. And I was intrigued, and so I decided to read one of her books. And when I did, guys, I was utterly disappointed. I don't mean to sound rude or arrogant or mean, but what needs to be said needs to be said so somebody can be challenged out of their comfort zone today. I was not only sad because she hyped herself, but because she had given herself so much visibility without due preparation. Grammatical blunders were just hitting me left and right. And I'm not talking about the kind of grammatical blunders that we are predisposed to by our reason of imperfection as human beings. I'm talking about such grammatical blunders that reveals a gap in capacity. And I was ashamed personally as a writer. It wasn't just about the grammatical blunders, but the structure, the style, the technicality, everything. She was just missing everything. And the worst part, she had supporters who affirmed her story and her competence. And as far as I could tell, she was so confident in her abilities. Somebody shouts chaos, chaos. So why do people who have lower abilities tend to overestimate their skills and be so confident? And why do those who have higher abilities and higher competence tend to be more cautious about self-evaluation? This is a crazy psychological phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. But here's the thing: self-perception is an unreliable measure of qualification. You're not good simply because you say you are. There is an objective standard to your craft that you must attain through excellence. And when you know only a little about your craft, you might judge yourself highly based on that little you know. And even external validation can be an unreliable measure of qualification. If you're surrounded by people who have no idea or who are poorly acquainted with the objective standards of your craft and are only validating you but not giving you technical feedback, they will cheer you into mediocrity. I've always said that mediocrity can feel like achievement when no higher benchmark is present in your environment. But that's not even it. There are hidden mechanisms that sustains mediocrity that I want to share with you. So, when you focus on performance, visibility, and output too early, you reinforce what you already know, the little you already know, rather than expanding and outgrowing your current capacity. And such reinforcement can make you slip into a comfort zone of repeating only what works and avoiding difficult tasks that threaten the appearance of talent. It's like training on the same weight in the gym every day. You keep performing the movements flawlessly, but your strength never actually increases. Eventually, you end up with fragile competence. You end up with visible outputs and public display without any underlying mastery. And secondly, once your attention is divided between improving your skills and managing how you're perceived on the outside, the quality of your learning declines because research in cognitive load shows that learning requires concentrated mental efforts. So ultimately, your focus shifts from learning to impression management. So these mechanisms combine forces to create something scary known as the plateau effect, which is when your skills stop evolving. Oh my gosh, I don't know about you guys, but this is very scary to me. And yes, success and growth might still occur, but it would be accidental. And anything accidental is shallow and temporary and cannot be replicated. So, what snatches exceptional people from the jaws of mediocrity and the plateau effect? Practice, but not just any kind. Let's unravel this. Now, skill development onto expertise requires a phase of obscurity where competence is built without the pressure that visibility drags with it. And this phase of obscurity is usually unenjoyable because it is done away from public evaluation and from immediate reward. It's just you and yourself building the capacity that your skill and your ambitions require. And here is what a lot of people do not know about deliberate practice. I could write consistently and yet be bad at it. Practicing deliberately has less to do with being around the environment of that skill or engaging in that skill continually, but it has more to do with whether that activity is structured enough to push beyond your current capacity, beyond what you're good at, beyond what you're comfortable with, beyond what you're used to. So if I just continue writing but never actually study structure, style, technique, rules, and other writers, I will continue writing at roughly the same level even after years of output. The secret ingredient of deliberate practice is structure. Engagement in that skill must be structured enough to target weaknesses and build technique. Now let's focus on those two components, weakness and technique. When I'm having a training session for writing, I'm not just doing the thing, I'm not just writing, I am targeting a specific area I suck at. And this could be how to make dialogues sound more natural. Genuinely, I still suck at this. So I set the goal for a period of maybe 2 weeks. And I begin to study dialogues in novels. I imitate it. I analyze the pacing and the subtext. I begin to write dialogue only scenes, infusing character voice and etc. So I'm going to build my assessment based on that weakness, around that weakness. And after I get the feedback from the assessment, I'm going to repeat the assessment with refinement based on the feedback I have gotten. Now, this is practice with direction. So, as I say this, you're probably already thinking about that area in your skill that you suck at. What I want you to do is to highlight that area, separate it for a period of maybe 2 weeks, any time that you need. And I want you to begin to work on that area deliberately. Gather the articles, gather the YouTube videos, the courses, everything that you need, and seek to improve that area specifically rather than just passively engaging in that activity, in that skill without structure. Every craft has invisible sub skills that are foundational to the craft. What deliberate practice does is that it isolates these sub skills and trains them specifically. So, in public speaking and communication, for instance, the sub skills are storytelling, logical flow, improvisation, etc. So, I want you to think about the sub skills in your skill or in your domain, or you could research it, and I want you to begin to work on them specifically. This is how you create a U sized hole in your field. Guys, if I had sat down to learn, if I had sat down to learn, to practice deliberately the foundational skills of writing, I would have been a badass writer by now. But no, I spent my time writing many botched books than learning how to actually write a book. And I spent my time writing one book for so many years, writing and rewriting, because when I was supposed to learn how to write a book, I was too busy writing a book. Misplaced priorities. So, if you're perfectionistic, you've probably been nodding your head to everything I've been saying. And if you're not, you're probably thinking, so should I never put myself out there until I am perfect? Now, here's the thing, there is a spectrum. On one end is perfectionism, and on the other end is mediocrity. While trying to discourage people from maladaptive perfectionism, the bad kind, we might unwittingly push them towards mediocrity. And while encouraging you to strive for excellence, I might be nudging you towards perfectionism. It's a slippery slope. But here's the thing, perfectionism is mainly characterized by fear, an irrational fear, the fear of failure, the fear of imperfection, the fear of judgment, insecurity, and constant self doubt. What I'm not saying is that you should engage in endless seasons of learning and practicing. I'm not saying that this alone could lead to analysis paralysis and perfectionism, which is toxic, very, very toxic. What I am saying is that people at the infancy of their skills should prioritize practice and stall public display and production until they've gained enough stamina to withstand the pressure of public evaluation. And they should keep improving still so that their skills will not plateau. So, what I'm talking about here is controlled and tactical exposure, not complete avoidance. I'm talking about preparation based on competence, not endless preparation based on fear. That is perfectionism. You will never be perfect before you start. Even when you start and you're striving for perfection, you will never be perfect. Growth is continuous. So, if you picked up a skill or you have a potential, consider the following phases. Phase one is the phase of obscurity, and this is where you study and you practice and you correct your mistakes and you experiment with whatever it is that you're learning. In this phase, there should be no focus, no emphasis on visibility whatsoever. The second phase is controlled exposure. This is where you consider small scale output and low stakes performance. For writing, for instance, you could put out a blog and show it to your family and your trusted friends, or share it within an enclosed group of people that are like-minded, so you can get constructive feedback. That constructive feedback is necessary, not validation, not affirmation, constructive feedback mainly. And finally, the phase of performance. This is when you begin to publicly display those skills that you have built over time. It won't be perfect, but it's going to be good enough to withstand public evaluation. You would have built enough stamina. At this point, performance is not replacing development, rather, it is built strategically upon development. And even at this point, you would still have to reserve some of your time, your energy, and your resources to train, to practice more, to learn, to receive feedback and improve so that your skills will not plateau. We must continue to evolve to the demands of our skills and the world. So if you're still thinking, Lydia, I've heard all you have to say about this topic and I have seen the various phases, but I don't know where to go from here. Here are some practical tips. First off, assess your current level in the area of your skills. Are you a beginner, an intermediate, or maybe a pro? Do this by yourself and then assess the phase you've given yourself to. You're probably a beginner who is already in the second phase of controlled exposure, or a beginner in the phase of complete exposure and performance. I want you to assess the phase and the level you're in and make adjustments accordingly. So if you're a beginner, you should be in phase one, not phase three or phase 10. If you do not want to be plunged into a state of mediocrity. And number three, if you're just starting and you already have a platform, you probably have a channel or an account or a group or something, then please take a break and go back to cloister yourself and learn what you need to learn before you emerge back out there with excellence and substance. And number four, if you're stable like me, you're not perfect, you're not a professional, but you're stable, you're significantly formed. I want you to assess your weaknesses and create a month or 2 months or 3 months to fix those weaknesses. I want you to know that this girl who is sitting before you and giving you all these speeches is not speaking to you as one who has attained. In fact, compared to my perfectionistic standards, I have not even gotten anywhere. I have not scratched the surface. But the difference between me and a lot of other people out there is I seek to improve. I always want to improve, and I will not allow deadlines and life demands to stop my development or hinder it. I want you to remember that excellence, competence in your domain and in your purpose driven ambition is going to require you to cloister yourself and to deliberately build the stamina and the substance that is required to sustain success in that field. And so I want you to pursue excellence actively today. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't to join the community, and I'll see you in the next content. Bye bye.